Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. Good morning in some cases for a few of you. I am Kamla Rampersad Silva, Chief Executive Officer of the Caribbean Corporate Governance Institute. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to our first meeting of the International Learning Network for this year. Today, we look at the exciting development of artificial intelligence, but more so, generative AI, and also what this means for the rest of the world as China's DeepSeek released R1 as an open source application that has been rivaling the very popular ChatGPT. It is no secret that China is challenging the United States to become the world's superpower. And this latest development is just an example of how far China has progressed in the last few years. Today, I will be joined by three experts: Professor Ashish Jha, who I imagine is Indian, currently living in Ireland; Vusani Ndlovu from South Africa, and who is now, I think it's Saudi Arabia, uh,
In the UAE, in
United Arab Emirates.
yeah, right.
Okay, so he's in the Emirates. And of course, we have Professor Bob Garratt, who is from the UK and is joining us from the UK, but who has spent many years in Hong Kong and the African continent, and so will be giving us a greater world view. I will introduce them in greater detail a little later on. But first, let me share that we are also live streaming all of today's discussion on our YouTube channel and on our LinkedIn and Facebook pages as well. So hello to everyone who has joined us via these media. And a very special thank you to Warren Anderson, who is our social media support, who continually does a really excellent job for us. I would also like to acknowledge and thank our CCGI team, Laura Sinanan, Jacqueline de Chaussee, Quantrell de Silva, and Jeremy Logan for their hard work and support. And now let me formally welcome all of you who are present here in this virtual room for today's session. Many of you are members of CCGI and regular attendees to our events. Thank you for your continued support. However, we do have a few new attendees. So I want to say a special hello to members of AmCham Guyana. I know several persons had expressed an interest to join. I'm not sure if they are in the room with us yet, but we do have some persons from Guyana, our own director from there, Avia Lindy. And I see we have Christian Khan, who is Trinidadian, but who I met in Guyana recently as well. So welcome to all of you.
Thanks,
Today
Kamala.
we may, thank you. We may also be joined by the president of the chamber from the Dominican Republic. I also met him recently, and he showed great interest in the work that we do here at CCGI. So for those of you who may not know a lot about us, I just want to share a bit. Established as a nonprofit membership organization in 2012, the Caribbean Corporate Governance Institute currently enjoys over 300 members from a range of private and public sector organizations across the Caribbean region. We are pleased to share that these include persons from Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, Barbados, Belize, St. Lucia, Guyana, the British Virgin Islands, St. Martin, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. As we have done in the last 5 years, we host a range of workshops and panel discussions online on evolving issues in governance. We also host our signature event, Governance Week, and a two-day global conference. And all of these are held online to easily facilitate persons' attendance throughout the Caribbean region. I'm happy to share too this year our theme for Governance Week is Governance in an Age of Generative AI. And as usual, we will be joined by over 50 leaders from the Caribbean to explore this very important theme. Also, I'm happy to share that we have been invited to become strategic partners with Suriname's Energy Conference, which will be held in June, June 17th to 20th in Paramaribo, Suriname. It's going to be a new market for us, and we are happy that we've been invited to share and partner with them. So as we develop that relationship, we'll be sharing more with you as we go further. Many of you would recall that in Trinidad and Tobago, we launched the 2024 Corporate Governance Code in October last year. This year, our focus is on building awareness and adoption of that code. So to that end, we plan to host our second breakfast session at Trinidad Hilton on Thursday, April 10th from 7 a.m. There's also new whistleblower legislation to come in Trinidad and Tobago. So on Friday, April 11th, we'll be hosting a workshop to prepare organizations for this new legislation. And that workshop will be facilitated by Claire Gomez Miller. And as I was sharing with Professor Garratt before we went live, uh, we would be bringing Nandi Mandela, granddaughter of Nelson Mandela, into the Caribbean region next month. We are finalizing arrangements to host her here in Trinidad for an event in which she'd be looking at inspiring leaders, particularly women, as she describes some of her own experiences in South Africa. So as soon as we have details on those as well, we will inform you. In the interim, please visit our website and look at all of the events we have open for registration, including our Role of the Board series. And if you are not yet a member, do consider joining us and actively contribute to the conversation on how we can improve leadership and governance to achieve sustainable outcomes. Persons may join us as individual members, or your companies may choose to pay for bundle membership, which can cover from 6 to 12 members. Now, just as we get started for today's panel discussion, I want to share some regular housekeeping announcements that we have here at CCGI. We always ask that you please ensure your full name is captured on your screen. This is because we don't host webinars, but we are in a virtual meeting room, which allows everyone to very easily access and engage with others in the room. And so we'd like to ensure that everyone is easily identifiable. We also request, please, that you keep your microphone on mute throughout the session. During the Q&A period, if it is you'd like to ask a question, you can raise your hand using the virtual icon at the bottom of your screen. And after you have completed your contribution, please make sure to mute your mic again so that we can minimize any disruptive noises in the background. And of course, throughout the session, you can make comments or ask questions in the chat feature on Zoom. Those of you who need to earn CBDs or PDUs as part of your ongoing certification, you may use these sessions to claim your points. For our workshops, we automatically give certificates of participations to everyone. Not so with the panel discussions. If you need CPDs for this session, please email us to make a formal request. We will need to ensure that you were registered for the session and that you were present throughout the time before we will issue the certificate with the CPD hours. Okay? And finally, we would be putting a survey link towards the end of the session. We'd appreciate it sincerely if you take 2 minutes and give us your feedback. And now to get to today's theme on generative AI and politics. I want to share a video that was posted yesterday on First Post with Palki Sharma. Here she talks about the relationship between OpenAI, creators of ChatGPT, and Microsoft, the company which funded it. She also notes the entry of DeepSeek R1 from China into the market and some implications for us for AI. So before I introduce our panels for today, I'd like us to take a look at this video, just 5 minutes long. So Quantrell, are you ready to play it?
Yep.
Right, so let's go to the video.
OpenAI and Microsoft. They were once the golden couple of artificial intelligence. Microsoft poured billions into OpenAI, giving it the computing power it needed. In return, OpenAI gave Microsoft exclusive access, helping it stay ahead in the AI race. Seemed like the perfect partnership. Power, resources, and cutting-edge technology. But like many great love stories, this one too may be heading for a breakup. Why? Because of clashing visions. OpenAI believes that AI is still booming. It wants more computing power to keep up. It's pushing for expanding AI infrastructure. Microsoft, however, is hesitating. Both say it is canceling data center leases. That's because its CEO, Satya Nadella, is not very sure. He believes while there is need for computing power, it's important to not overdo it. So Microsoft is taking a measured approach. It will expand, but within set limits.
At some point, the supply and demand have to map. That's why I'm tracking both sides of it. You can go off the rails completely when you are hyping yourself with the supply side versus really understanding how to translate that into real value to customers.
Now, a quick primer here. The Microsoft OpenAI partnership began in 2019, 3 years before ChatGPT came out. Microsoft invested $1 billion into OpenAI. It saw this as an opportunity to win the AI race. By 2023, Microsoft has invested or had invested $13 billion in OpenAI. Its products are integrated. OpenAI relies on Microsoft's infrastructure, so it's quite the symbiotic relationship. But not anymore, because now OpenAI is looking for alternatives. And who will replace Microsoft? The Stargate Initiative, the $500 billion AI project endorsed by Donald Trump. The partners include OpenAI, SoftBank, and Oracle. So by 2030, OpenAI expects to get 75% of its computing power from here. But beyond the internal politics, let's look at the bigger picture. Until 2024, developing AI models was not just complex, it was also quite expensive. Tech giants poured in billions of dollars, pushing spending to record highs. Take OpenAI, for example. In 2024, its cash burn hit $2 billion. This year, it is projected to soar to $7 billion. By 2027, it could reach $20 billion, and profitability is not expected until 2030. This is because of rapid expansion. OpenAI is moving very fast, building more computing centers, developing faster models, and that kind of speed comes at a cost, a massive cost. For years, this was seen as the only way forward in AI, but then came China's DeepSeek, an AI model built for mere millions. And suddenly, the West had to ask itself, are they burning more cash than they have to? Can AI be developed more efficiently? More importantly, is there really demand for so much AI? And that last point is what Satya Nadella is concerned about. He thinks the AI market is concentrated. Right now, there is an oversupply of everything, especially computing power. And that means only one thing. If the demand is not enough, not high enough, the prices will go down.
I am thrilled that I'm going to be leasing a lot of capacity in 27, 28 because I look at the builds and I'm saying, this is fantastic. The only thing that's going to happen with all the compute builds is the prices are going to come down.
And Satya Nadella is not the only one who's thinking on these lines. The markets seem to agree with him. The last few years have seen an AI boom. Tech stocks have surged. But hedge funds are now reducing their holdings in big tech. That is because of two reasons. One, high AI capital expenditure, and two, the underperformance of such stocks. Look at Wall Street today. 6 out of 7 big tech stocks opened in the red. So hedge funds are dumping these stocks. They're diversifying their investments. What does all of this mean? Is AI demand truly shrinking? When it started, AI's future seemed limitless, but now the industry is facing a reckoning. The money is flowing slower, the risks are growing bigger, and the promises, well, they're starting to look expensive. So this Is this a temporary slowdown, or is this the start of a reality check? Either way, the age of blind AI optimism may be getting over. The companies that survive won't be the ones that spend the most, but the ones that spend the smartest.
That's the
Thank you very much, Quantrell. So, a very thought-provoking news piece there by Palki Sharma. So she's demonstrating that Microsoft is taking a much more measured approach and, a valid question in terms of the spending, especially when DeepSeek entered the market and proved that you didn't need billions in order to develop generative AI. So some key questions she also asked is the demand for AI shrinking? I don't think it is. So I think that's something that we'll be discussing here a bit today as well. So I'd like to now introduce our speakers. I'll start with Professor Garratt. So Professor Bob Garratt needs no introduction to a CCGI audience. He is a global giant in corporate governance. Forgive me, Quantrell, I'm waiting for you to spotlight Professor Garratt. There we go.
Hi.
Okay.
And I'm only 5'7".
Nevertheless, a global giant in corporate governance, especially following his groundbreaking bestseller, The Fish Rots from the Head, which today continues to be very relevant for directors who wish to improve their effectiveness in governance. Professor Garratt was our inaugural keynote speaker when we first conceived of Governance Week and hosted it in the early throes of the COVID-19 pandemic. He later encouraged us to use the online space to host a global conference on corporate governance, which we did later that year in 2020. It was also at his recommendation that this international learning network was developed. It allows us to invite international speakers whose perspectives help shape our understanding of the evolving practices in governance. Professor Garratt was given the title of CCGI's Global Ambassador in 2022 when we celebrated the Institute's 10th anniversary. And we were thrilled to have hosted him in Guyana last November for our end-of-year celebration. His life spans architectural education, action learning-based community development, the founding of the first MBA program in China, the founding of the Asian Management Center in Brunei Darussalam, and many board development processes in private, family, state, and not-for-profit businesses. His newest book on the challenge for the next generation of directors, Breaking the Social Silence on Corporate Governance, will be published later this year. And if I may add, he is also a visiting professor in corporate governance at the Islamic University of Indonesia, Jakarta. So we are very pleased to have Professor Garratt with us. And now I'd also like to introduce Professor Ashish Jha. And Ashish is an associate professor in the field of business analytics for Trinity Business School, Trinity College in Dublin. He is the director of Trinity Center for Digital Business and Analytics and the head of the Operations and Analytics area. He's the founding director of the MSc Business Analytics, which is ranked in the top 30 in the world. He is a distinguished member of the Association of Information Systems. He is a funded investigator at SFI Research Center, which is a center for AI research. His papers have been published in many top journals, and he has also presented his work at numerous top conferences around the world. He serves as an associate editor for European Journal for Informational Systems and Information and Management, among others. Ashish works closely with firms like Microsoft, Novartis, Zoetis, and advises firms and local government bodies on AI adoption. And now I'd like to introduce Vusani. Just to share with persons too that we do have their detailed profiles in the agenda, which was sent to you today. And I see that Laura has put it in the chat for anyone who did not get an opportunity to receive the agenda with the detailed profiles, okay? And so now I'd like to introduce Vusani Ndlovu. And Vusani has worked across key global markets, including Africa, the Middle East, and Asia, bringing a wealth of cross-cultural experience to discussions on leadership, marketing, and organizational strategy. As a director at the GCC Board Directors Institute, he leads membership engagement and communications, ensuring strategic alignment with evolving needs of board members across the region. With a strong background in marketing, communications, and stakeholder engagement, he has extensive experience in shaping narratives and building influential networks. Recognizing that fostering the next generation of business leaders is important, he also actively mentors young entrepreneurs in South Africa. And also recognizing the transformative power of technology, Vusani encourages leaders to embrace digital innovation as a tool for strategic growth. He believes that businesses, regardless of size, can leverage emerging technologies to sharpen their competitive edge and future-proof their organizations. So, as I said, you can read more about Vusani, Ashish, and Professor Garratt in the detailed profiles that were shared with you on the agenda. At this point, I would like to invite Professor Garratt to begin the conversation and share his thoughts with us on this emerging generative AI, implications of the release of China's DeepSeek R1 and geopolitics here for us in the region. Professor Garratt.
Thank you, Kamla. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I hope to learn a lot from this session because although Kamla said at the beginning, I'm an expert, I'm not in this area, not in AI. I'm using it as best I can, been doing quite a bit with it the last few weeks, but I'm puzzled by it. Perhaps what I'm a bit more expert on is, to an extent, China. And having spent nearly 40 years in and around China, starting in the Cultural Revolution, towards the end of the Cultural Revolution, through my dear wife Sally's uncle being British ambassador there, that gave me extremely high level entry to some of the top thinking going on at the end of the Cultural Revolution and allowing us to develop the first ever action learning based Chinese MBA program from 1982 onwards, which has now manifested itself as the China European International Business School in Shanghai. Been through all that, but I was reminded as Kamla was talking that because I had this extraordinary privilege of having reasonably open access to some of the Chinese world leaders at that strange time at the end of and then of the Cultural Revolution and building up to Deng Xiaoping's very interesting development of China. I was reminded of something. I better not mention his name, but he was a world leader of China. And we used to have really good dinners at the British Embassy very frequently. And I'm afraid during those dinners, sometimes some drink was taken. Let's put it that way. They were fairly boisterous dinners and very open. And there was one session when I was mentioning that the U.S. ambassador who later became U.S. president, George Bush Sr., was pushing to develop business and corporate governance ideas in China. And he, my Chinese host, was sitting next to me, and he was just smiling a lot. So I said, "Why are you smiling?" And he said, "Well, we like George Vusani. He is a very good and a very wise man. He understands the Chinese." But he said, "But we don't understand the Americans very much at all, because we just cannot ever get to grips with them. They are all over the place. They have all sorts of ideas. They have a huge amount of power." This may sound familiar, by the way, today, but this was back in 1976. And he was saying, so we treat the Americans in the nicest possible way, but as though they were 12-year-olds, which rocked me as a statement. And he said, they're wonderful, they're full of energy, they're full of ideas, but they just cannot control themselves. And I was thinking about that as Kamla was talking, because that's partly the impression I'm getting of AI now. And I think that's one of my big worries, is that it's a bit going all over the place. So artificial intelligence, I now honestly don't know what the artificial bit means. And I certainly don't know what the intelligence bit means. And I'm increasingly puzzled as I begin to get into it. I'm very aware that it could go down the route, as we're seeing now with the Trump administration, of it becoming a really useless mnemonic, that it's so general that it's all over the place. And I'm concerned that already we've seen the end of CSR. We've seen the end of ESG, and I'm particularly worried about the G bit, the governance bit, being given that mnemonic. We've certainly seen the sudden death of EDI with a vengeance. And behind that is another mnemonic, which is known as FOMO, fear of missing out. And that fear of missing out is normally driven by a fear of literally losing out, or a fear of not being greedy enough, or not being greedy enough soon enough to actually make serious money out of things. And that has set a context in which I'm not cynical, but skeptical about AI, because I think some of the ideas behind it are so powerful, we just have to take them seriously. But they're being taken seriously in a much more financial context. And again, I was reminded of Tim Berners-Lee and the way he developed the concept of the World Wide Web and then gave it to the world without any idea of personal financial gain in that. And what worries me a lot about the AI I'm experiencing at the moment is that increasingly it's being driven by a handful of folk and a handful of their corporations to create global monopolies if they can. And that's, thank you for the video. That was very helpful indeed. The video actually highlighted some of the issues and some of the amounts of money being spent in investment. It didn't mention some of the environmentalist aspects of AI, particularly the huge demand on energy that the data centers are creating, energy and water, by the way. But there are all sorts of issues around that that go on in my head. And in the end, are we really looking at helping these oligarchs create their monopolies and then really lock in and really ramp up prices, which would be the typical economic approach to this? Is DeepSeek actually trying, because of its slim investment base, deliberately created so, is that going to be a world leader in a rather different way, at a low cost intervention in this area? And in the end, what are we going to do with it? I mean, I've been using it in the last few weeks in meetings where it's been possible to record and then play back fairly complex meetings around our area, around governance, around organizational development, around compliance. and get some reasonable, I wouldn't say brilliant, but some reasonable transcripts, précis, particularly shortened versions of what was going on, to the acceptance of all the people in the room, that was seen as a reasonable sort of minute of what was occurring. Now, that may be possibly a view of an artificial way of doing things, is another tool for doing things. When we tried to ask questions of what we were doing, a lot of it came out as gobbledygook. So I'm puzzled where the intelligence bit really comes in at the moment. There were one or two interesting slants on what was being said, but literally two out of nearly a whole day's work. And neither of those were seen as major breakthroughs. So I have concern about that. But I have interest in it because I think potentially there's a lot going on there that could really help us. So as I say, I sit here worried. I'm personally worried because, Paul McCartney, a whole group of artists, writers, designers, musicians were on British media yesterday, putting forward to the government opposition to their bill, which they think is going to leave the intellectual property of such people completely at the mercy of robber barons. And that's a big issue. It's an issue for me because I've got a new book coming out, and I'm not happy with the idea that as soon as it's published, it'll be what they call scraped. And I don't know what they'll do with it, but what I do know is I won't get much money out of it, and that concerns me. Not just me, and not just Paul McCartney, but a whole lot of other people all around the world. So we're in early days. We may be dealing with a whole group of emotionally teenage power brokers who really at the moment don't seem to be able to be brought under control, any sort of compliance, any moral control. So I'm willing to learn and roll on, please. Professor Jha, Vusani, and help me in my very puzzled mind at the moment.
Thank you very much, Professor Garratt. I think you raised some very, very important concerns for us. Certainly, we have to consider if AI has the emotional intelligence of a 12-year-old, although clearly it will really and truly be developing much faster.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Where exactly is it going to go is important. But I think a really critical point you made is to whose benefit? It's a monopoly for just a few. And that really should be worrisome to the rest of us in the world. You know, having a level playing field that allows for people to be able to use their creativity, use their innovation, make their own mark. That whole thing will be challenged when you have just a few persons who control AI, which is then being used by everyone. So very important for us to consider. And as you say, the impact where CSR is disappearing, as is ESG, discussions around that, people thinking that, you know, they have to grab as quickly as they can to make profits of what is in front of them because the changes are happening so quickly. And I also noted your point about the use of energy and more so water, and how this is going to have environmental implications for all of us as well. So very, very critical thoughts that you have raised here for us. So thank you so much for that. I will now like to invite Professor Ashish Kumar Jha to share his thoughts with us. Ashish?
Thanks, Kamla. And it is always challenging to follow someone like Professor Garratt, come in and then talk about something when the speaker before you has set groundwork and talked about all different geopolitical aspects. So I'll do what I can, and I'll stick to artificial intelligence bit of it. As Kamla mentioned, I'm a researcher in the side of analytics and AI. I advise firms, and I work with Microsoft as well a lot on their AI implementation strategy in Ireland. there's some very interesting things that Professor Garratt raised, and I second them. And I'll rather add numbers to that. A single Google search, for example, adds 0.2 grams of CO2. That's the carbon emission of a single Google search. A single ChatGPT search is about 8 times higher at 1 gram CO2. It's 8 times more environmentally expensive. In Ireland, we have loads of data centers. As of today, data centers are the biggest consumers of electricity, overtaking all urban households put together. So 21% of all electricity in Ireland is consumed by data centers. Partly AI and AI and the computing power required for that is to blame there. So AI is becoming sort of ubiquitous in our life. Like it's everywhere. Everyone is talking about that. If I look at it, not from a very scientific perspective, but just taking a step back, I would say we are in the phase of AI where the internet was around early 2000s. It was everywhere. Everyone was talking about that. Every company had a .com attached to that, and they did not know it then. They were just waiting for a .com bust after 2001. They were waiting for that. So AI is everywhere. Not a lot of companies have actually figured out how to properly monetize AI, how to make profits of AI. OpenAI, as the video showed that Kamla had shared, is still loss making. DeepSeek has its own pricing model, so it's not leading in the price. We did Ireland-wide survey last year and again this year, and when we asked companies how they are using AI, and we have a huge participation in that, what we realized was many of them are not using AI standalone, but rather AI is coming as a part of a package tool. Your company uses SAP, ERP, or any other kind of system, Salesforce. You may be subscribing to them, and they have AI attached to that element, and that's how you start using AI. So how to monetize AI, how to increase the value proposition of the product that you're using through AI, that's where the money is in the future. So how many companies will be able to monetize that? Not a lot, but that doesn't stop companies from standing up today. This brings another question into perspective. What AI model do all of these companies have running at the back of it? If you talk of Salesforce or something like Bloomberg Financial Systems or Workday, which is a major HR human resource software player, what tool, what AI model are they using at the back of it? So allow me a 2-minute primer on technology at this point. So AI is by itself not a new technology. In our research center, Science Foundation Center that Kamla mentioned, we have been working with some sort of large language models for 12 years now, before it became fashionable, before it was called AI. We have been working with that for a big part of the last 12 years. And AI is a very loose term. Anything like basic regression, saying X leads to Y, practically is AI. That's what AI is. And that muddies the water, as Professor Garratt was saying. What is AI? Like, what exactly is the boundary? There's no boundary. No, we don't have a scientific commission here yet by UN or some global body saying this is AI. There are companies that are saying our model is powered by AI, and all they have is an if-else statement at the back of it, which is saying, if you see Kamla's face, that means it's a great event. That's it. Is that AI? Probably yes. So it's like normal intelligence. So probably we don't know. So that is, and at the other extreme, you have more complex ChatGPT-ish and DeepSeek kind of tools powering as a standalone software or powering other softwares. What DeepSeek and OpenAI are doing, they're sort of trying to get integrated into other softwares, take money as licensing medium and serve them. Now, these are called foundation models. Foundation models, these are the core models. They are trained and then you can use it. So for example, you can license, Kamla, for example, you can license from DeepSeek or from OpenAI, the core foundational model, and then train it on top of it with all the, let's say, annual reports of all the companies in Caribbean, and personalize that as corporate governance, chatbot corporate governance AI tool to give answers and to create documents just for Caribbean governance setup. Those are kind of roles that we will see in the future. The problem there is, who are the players and makers of these foundation models? As of today, 73%, and I'm just using the numbers that I got from some federation system, almost 73% of foundational models are US-based, 15% are China-based. That's the major competition. Those are the two major players. There are very few foundational models that exist outside of these two domains. EU announced this last week that they will launch Open Euro LLM, a project where they are willing to put billions because they are spooked by Donald Trump's administration and, of course, by DeepSeek. They want to create their own foundational model, and they're willing to put billions in that, called Open Euro LLM. I was advising local authorities here in Dublin and government authorities. They couldn't even use ChatGPT because OpenAI is not GDPR compliant yet. All its data centers are actually in US. They hope to be GDPR compliant by 1st of March, which is in a few days' time. So which foundational models? And once you choose a foundational model, the biases of that foundational model will run your system. It may not seem to be making much of an impact on you. You can look at all 10 or 12 major foundational models from Grok, Olama, DeepSeek. You can compare all of the big ones and say, okay, this is the foundational model I'll use to support my software, which is just providing HR practices or human resource system or corporate governance system. You can choose that. At 90% of the time, it will not make much of a difference. Your decision may be driven by finance. Grok is selling it cheaper, or DeepSeek is costly, or whatever. However, all of these models have biases. The weights, how they were trained, which data they were trained on, what they will say, what they will not say, what they will hide, what they will not hide. That will impact the eventual results that you will see. Can it become a big disinformation source in the future? We talked of democratization of information when internet started getting big. Are we talking of an era of democratization of misinformation now, where everyone can go it and create videos and audios and files and send across, and you have no idea which is the real file or not? We don't know. We are entering the wild west of AI at this point. What is possible? There are great many things that are possible. There are great many bad things that are possible. There are a lot of ways of making money in this. It will take a few more years for this whole wave to stabilize. A lot of companies are doing great, interesting, and useful things in this field, and yeah, that's the future. Geopolitically, I think it's more about sovereignty of those foundational models. We talked of data sovereignty for a lot of time, last 10, 12 years, but sovereignty of foundational models, that's the direction we are going. And who owns that sovereign foundational models? Will Chinese government allow applications within China that are built on foundational models that are sovereign to US, for example, Grok or OpenAI? Will government of India, for example, want that? What will EU want? There is a reason why Open Euro LLM is being pushed. So it creates a different kind of competition. We are back into space race. The space is AI now, and it has its own geopolitical implications in that space. So that's my initial thoughts. I'm happy to have a detailed chat and listen to other experts here, Vusani and Professor Garratt. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashish. And if I may just end where you started, when you look at the geopolitics of it, you're really looking at the fact that who owns the model and sovereignty of nations. So linking that to your point about the bias that would exist in those foundation models, and how that would really impact organizational culture, and how decisions are made on the whole. So very, very critical thoughts for organizations to consider. So it can't just be on lowest cost producer. The model has to match your value system, and it has to be giving you the outputs that you want. And I take particular note of your caution about the possibility of disinformation. We have seen this so many ways and so many times already. So we add that to Professor Garratt's thought about this is a 12-year-old, is let loose, then the implications for us are many. And I agree, there are a lot of great things that are possible with AI, but we also know we have a lot of bad actors. And at the moment, this 12-year-old is being groomed by both good and bad actors. So things that we have to be very careful of. So thank you so much, Ashish. And now I would like to invite Vusani Vusani, we are so happy to have you. We enjoy a great relationship with GCC BDI. I'm happy to have you as the membership director of GCC BDI. I'm sure there's a lot we could learn from you, even outside of this discussion on EI and geopolitics. But I'm happy to hear your thoughts now.
Thank you so much, Kamla. It's going to be hard to follow Ashish and Professor Bob Garratt. I mean, Ashish, you can tell he's quite knowledgeable in his subject matter there. I will also be asking lots of questions later on. I think I'll just drill on what the UAE, what the region is doing as a region that's also investing heavily. Okay. If anyone had watched Trump's inaugural speech, one of the key phrases he was saying the whole time is, "We will drill, baby, we will drill," and that's very interesting because that means all the carbon emission talks and everything else are just going out of the window. So basically, what has happened with the AI race is that I believe there are many parallel races that are occurring at the same time. Many people are just focused on obviously AI, the model itself. But behind the scenes, what we are seeing also is how OpenAI is investing heavily on power sources across the United States, right? Also, I think Microsoft is doing the same. So is Meta. These guys are repurposing old coal fields as we speak. Right now, they're opening them up. I have a mentor that I had a meeting with in the morning. He's quite retired right now. I think in his mid-70s. I think he's heading towards 75. And he was telling me he's been invited to be one of the directors in the coal mines that are opening in the United States. So a lot is happening when it comes to power and the needs of energy. So which also brings us to the region and what the region has been doing this side. So everyone is obviously focusing on these models, but we are doing something different this side, and we're leaning towards our core strengths, which are energy, strategic positioning, and also human capital. As most of you would know that we've been spending quite a lot of money, well, the GCC itself in trying to get a whole lot of talent into the region. And I think that's going to be a differentiator in the future. You also would have heard as when DeepSeek was released a couple of, is it weeks now or is it months? I can't keep up. There's just so many things happening. Trump came on, well, the politicians said, no, we will steal some of their brightest scientists and we'll buy them out. So human capital is going to be one of the most treasured things that each nation will have. America in the morning just released the golden, what do you call it? The golden citizenship, right? I'm sure in the future it will be an incentive for any of these scientists to be bought with these golden visas or whatever you call. So it's certainly interesting looking at human capital as well in acquiring the best of the best. And I think UAE and the GCC have done quite an amazing job at that. If the foresight that the region has had in terms of, they've hired, I think in 2017, the first region to hire a minister of AI. So His Excellency Oman was the first minister of AI in 2017, and he has been pushing the AI agenda since before it became a popular item in the world. And if you look at the work that he's done to just lay this foundation, we've already have an AI university in the region, and what they're focusing on is building building these models that are tailored to the region, Islamic banking and governance in the region, and so forth. So the other day, the region released, you can now renew your ID, I think, in 5 minutes. Before, we used to go to the Ministry of, I think it's Home Affairs, and hand in your ID, and it takes you a good hour perhaps. Now it's just a couple of minutes. So I think there are many good sides to AI, and also the uncharted territories bit side of the AI. Also, maybe to finish off with what the region is doing, and I think it would be better if I'm conversing with the other speakers later on, because I also do have questions of my own. We have a smart city that's being built that's called NEOM. Most of you would know what NEOM is, but it's supposedly supposed to be a smart city. So the foresight to have already thought of this ahead of time, and I know most people may have read and think that NEOM is actually failing. It's been scaled back to focus on data centers. For example, that the region just recently started establishing, I think it's been 5 years now. One of the core strengths of the region is energy. And currently, there is not enough green energy to power all this new AI need. So this is why America is going back to nuclear, is going back to coal. And right now, the region has oil, right? In the next 5 years, I think another advantage that we have with AI is there are so many there's so many engineers and scientists working on new energy models. Fusion is being looked at, and using gas, and there are so many models, and China has been refining their solar power models so long. We have, I mean, I think some of them are 80 to 90% efficient right now. And that is just breakthrough. So many breakthroughs are happening behind the scenes that so many people actually are not apprised of. Actually, we can't even keep up with the technology that most of these companies are investing in. And also, one last thing, I think looking at partnerships, what the region has done well is they have partnered with China, with Huawei, in establishing big data centers and also providing energy. They've also partnered up with Microsoft. So it's a good thing geopolitically that they are able to have this camaraderie with all these other partners, and balancing China and the United States out. It's just marvelous. One nation that I haven't heard a lot of is India, which I think has so much potential because they don't have any issues with any other country. They've managed to stay out as a very big global power. They've managed to stay out to handle all these parties and just be friends with them. So I think if India was smart, really, they could just perhaps in the future win this race. But I'll just stop there because I can go on so many other issues. Thank you so much, Kamla. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Vusani. I think that it's really interesting what's happening in your region. So a minister of AI in 2017.
Yeah.
Just years, light years.
Yeah, the foresight is amazing. Yeah, I mean, it goes back to 2012 during Arab Spring. He gave a talk, and I was there, and the region actually took a step back, like everyone is doing with AI now, and they say to themselves, the Arab Spring is occurring everywhere because as leaders, it clearly means there's something wrong with doing that people are not getting. So this type of foresight to just see what's going to be in demand and going to progress the nation, it's just amazing, I have to say.
Yes, especially saying that it wasn't just that you had a minister of AI, but you have a university that's focused on AI in the region too. And so
Yes.
therefore what you are looking at is treating with exactly the issues that Ashish mentioned earlier, which is the bias that would exist in these foundation models. So you are ensuring, and you spoke about it, that the model will be compliant with things that are culturally relevant to the region, like Islamic banking. So and you mentioned the benefits of having some of these technology allow for the speed at which service can be improved to person. So having your ID renewed in minutes rather than hours, that's a dream for us in the region, I have to say. Um, and I love where you ended in terms of looking at balancing the interests, because it's very clear the world is now toggling between, is it US dominance, Chinese dominance, what's actually going to happen. And I liked your example of partnering both with Huawei and Microsoft, so finding a way to be able to be part of that relationship with both players, and hopefully influence the way in which development takes place, so that there's room for the rest of us to be able to have a unique identity still. That these are crucial things. So I would now like to invite our other speakers to come back in. So Professor Garratt and Professor Ashish Jha. Uh, and what we have looked at here, very wide implications in many respects. We are looking at who really will rule the world, not just in terms of the global dominance as a superpower, but the use of these AI models, which will infiltrate our everyday life. So the way in which organizations are governed, the way in which our operations are done, all of these things will be impacted by AI. So for business leaders in the Caribbean region, we are not players in the midst of this great game that is happening. Uh, what would you advise that the business leaders in the Caribbean region pay attention to? Ashish, can I come to you with that question, since this digital technology is your space?
No, thanks, Kamla. So first, I don't agree with the statement that Caribbean companies are not a major player. They are. Every company is a major player in this space. And thing is, it's not. There are very few regions in the world that are actively looking at legislating or setting up guardrails around AI implementation in organization. It is, as I said, wild west right now. If you are visionary and you are implementing it right, it's a great product. If you are not implementing it right, it can spell chaos for your company. So there is a very old research by in our field. It was 1990 paper, if I remember correctly, and when IT was sort of MIS technology, PCs were getting popular initially. It called IT Does Not Matter by Professor Nicholas Carr. Because IT does not matter. What Nick Carr argued in that research was, it's not the IT that will help your company. And he said in 1990, get better or worse from your competition, or have higher business value, or be advanced. It is how you use IT. The same stands true for AI. It's not, your company will not be great if you do a partnership with OpenAI and implement a couple of $100 million worth of AI in your organization. It is how you use it to deliver value. Is it delivering value at the right space, at the right time, to the right set of people, to consumers? So the onus on boards, the onus on organizational leadership to identify the right opportunities is very important. And it's also important that they engage, because possibly not everyone understands these technologies. It's fair. It's fair to acknowledge that we don't understand these technologies. So engaging with people who understand these technologies, so that you become literate and then take the right decisions, and don't just be part of the fad that let's invest some hundred millions. Your company is going nowhere with that. Identify the right opportunities. And second is looking at the safety and security, the AI ethics part. This is where EU AI Act, which recently came into being in EU, is very important. Now, EU has legislated around that. Many other regions have not, but and there are good and bad things to the AI Act. We can argue for it in a different meeting. Thing is, I think it's a good template to start with voluntarily for other regions, to look at what is what are these people who have suggested something on how AI should be implemented? How do they look at it? And then take the good things from there, because that acts as a good safeguard to implement. So ensuring you are on the right side of the ethical domain. Sometimes what happens is you implement AI and you don't realize what you have done. You don't realize what you have done, and you have just submitted entire data of your consumers to OpenAI without realizing what is the implication. You don't want to do that. So understanding the ethics of what you are doing and understanding the where you want to make the right investment for the right benefit, that is very important. I think every business leader should be looking at that. Becoming AI literate is what I would say.
Mhm. Excellent. And that makes sense, especially in the context that understanding it means that you also need to control this urge that Professor Garratt mentioned, the FOMO, fear of
Yep,
missing out. Don't jump in
absolutely.
with both legs, because next thing you may find that you have really given up all of your competitiveness because your data is just already out there. So very good advice. I'm just going to let our participants know it's now 1:30, so we have an hour remaining in the session, and therefore we are open to having any questions from you. Just please raise your hand if you can in using the icon at the bottom of your screen, or if you wish to, you may put your question in the chat feature so we can see and address it, or invite you to speak. Okay, so just letting you know, we are happy to have all the engagement from persons in the audience now. And I want to acknowledge the comment from Ria Ryan, who says, the quote for the year, Professor Garratt: emotionally teenaged power brokers. So that's what AI basically is, that you have shared with us. It's important for us to see that perspective, because then we can apply the advice that Ashish just gave, which is that take time to understand it. Even as it's changing as we speak, take time to understand it, get the experts in to give you some idea of the direction this is going, so that you can really get the benefits of what AI is offering. So Vusani, tell us what the AI adoption has been like in your region, given that there has been this focus so many years ahead of the rest of us who suddenly became aware of it through the launch of ChatGPT. Is it that it's primarily the government sector that has invested in this to be able to build out what they would want their future to be like, or a lot of the organizations themselves already using AI in their everyday operations? And as soon as you answer that, I'll go to Vivek, who has raised his hand for a question.
No, that's thanks, Kamla. Maybe let me start off and say, you mentioned that the Caribbean is not ready for being involved in the race, and I agree with Ashish. That's definitely not true. I think any nation right now actually is quite capable of being in the race. It all boils down to leadership in my thoughts. DeepSeek used a concept called distillation. Maybe Ashish can explain for us what that means eloquently, because I don't think I would be able to explain it to you, but it's I will try and be broad, and maybe Ashish can explain that, and then I'll take over again. Ashish, do you want to just go into distillation, and then I'll pick up from there, please.
Sure. So, yeah, so I think what Vusani wants to talk about is that what DeepSeek has done is told us and shown the world that you can do AI at fraction of a cost. And
Yeah.
they do. I don't want to get into the too much on technological aspect.
Yeah.
So what OpenAI does, it is trained on the entire universe of the world's information. That's what it is. So it requires a lot of computational power. You get everything, as Professor Garratt was saying. You take his book, you take all the music videos, everything, music, lyrics, everything, and run that on a big server farm and create a foundational model that has read everything. And then you ask questions, you fine tune it. There are certain steps in that, and you fine tune it. DeepSeek came back and said it's not necessary. If Vusani comes up and says, "Can you tell me lyrics of an interesting song that fits the cultural perspective of UAE, for example," you don't need something that has been taught on scientific principles of Newton and Einstein to write that song. You don't need that. So what you need is a system that has been trained on small bits and pieces, and it will be 90% there anyway. And DeepSeek model is so light. I'm talking to you sitting in front of a computer. DeepSeek is installed. I use DeepSeek, and it's installed, the core model installed on this computer. It can on a single computer. The same is true for Llama as well. Llama is another model, Llama from Facebook Meta's stable. It's also very light. OpenAI models are very expensive and very vast. So DeepSeek, if China can do it, and anyone can do it, and it's open source, so you can use that technology now actually and create your own in any country.
Thank you so much, Ashish. That's exactly what distillation is, and you can actually apply this to boards as well and governance. It's always actually very smart at times to take a step back and see what the other very eager beavers are doing, and you know, the tortoise also won the race at the end of the day. If you look at technology and really, if you take a step back, all of us, and we let's look at social media. I mean, America had Silicon Valley way back, and you know, they had Facebook. I think it was 2005 or 4 back then. And now you look at the way TikTok is just taken over everybody's lives, right? With America having all this head start. So I think it's always everybody's game. It's just not predictable who will actually be on top of the tape when it comes to AI. That's still far off. Well, in the region, one of the most amazing things is how the region is run. And the funny thing is, it's quite new to corporate governance. I'm part of GCC BDI, and I can tell you it's really brand new. And before I was at the IRDSA in South Africa, where corporate governance actually is quite matured. But the nimbleness of leadership here and the foresight is just staggering, right? They run it like a corporation, which actually it seems sad when I mention it, but I mean, it's at times for efficiency, this is how you have to run government, right? And as I say, the Minister of AI had his KPI set out for him. I mean, you can just go on YouTube and look at his talks online, and it was just quite amazing because no one had ever been in that field. There's no minister before who's ever been a minister of KPI, so of AI. So it's like, boss, how do I actually fulfill these KPIs? I have no reference to anything, and so it's just amazing of what they have thought of so far, and also looking at the green energy. They're focused on also creating green energy because they know in 5 years' time, most consumers would be like, oh, actually, you're using so much data. You're using a model that is drawing power from the oil fields of Saudi. I mean, later on, people are going to start caring where actually who's partnered up with who and everything else. So I think we have conscious bias. I mean, if you look at these millennials, you also have to think ahead. Definitely there will, for now, no one cares. It's about the cheapest power you can get, so that obviously we evolve AI. But in the future, where the energy is coming from and who you've partnered with will definitely matter. So I think the region has had that foresight. They definitely know the lifespan of them using the oil and the gas to power up all these data centers is just going to be redundant in the future.
And if I may just follow up on that point, Vusani,
Yeah.
it means China is practically ahead in many respects because of their investment in renewable energies, as opposed to, as you said, when US President Trump, at his inauguration, his rallying cry was drill, baby, drill. And therefore, they're going to go back to the whole focus on fossil fuels. So as the world progresses and we look at where the energy source is coming from and who do we support as we choose which AI foundation we are going to build on. Those things would likely be among the considerations as well. So there was a question from Novak. Novak, would you like to unmute?
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I think it's very interesting for this particular topic, and it's very relevant. The thing about AI, it has tremendous utility and value in transforming the way how we do business and fundamentally changing our P&Ls, right? One of the things that I think we need to sort of emphasize on is the fact that although currently a lot of the use around AI is exploratory and people may be using it, I would use the word in a sort of gray market approach where they're just using the free tools that are available and they may be using their corporate data. But there are implementation models where you can leverage these commercial products but sandbox with your institutional data. So of course, my point is really here that we need to have some sort of national policy as it pertains to AI, as it pertains to data governance, as it pertains to data privacy, and also at the organizational level. Companies who don't have an AI policy or who don't have data governance or data privacy implemented yet, these things are foundation blocks before you can transform the business. But what you're seeing is a lot of companies are sort of greenwashing is the inappropriate term, but they are doing the equivalent of greenwashing with AI. They are AI washing. So they are just sticking AI labels on their products and services when it may not even be associated with AI. So I think we really need a really stable foundation here in terms of the AI policy, the data governance, data privacy, and it's certainly a mechanism to transform how we do business in the region.
Absolutely. That is very interesting, Novak. Sorry, Kamla, I just wanted to add a couple of points to what Novak mentioned. So two separate things here. First thing talked about is having AI policies, Novak there, and you're right. We have done our studies in Europe and in Ireland, and what we call that thing is shadow AI culture. So when organizations don't have AI policy or they forbid AI, people open up two different AIs and do different computers and would put things in ChatGPT here and copy paste to the official files there. This leads to a lot of loss of private confidential corporate data. In most cases, if you are an individual user, you would and you are using free or semi-paid versions, not enterprise versions, your data is actually being fed to train those models as well in most cases. So what we tell firms here is that genie is out of the bottle. There's no way putting it back into the bottle. Don't try that. AI is there. Rather use an enterprise grade system where you control things, where you can control the information. Your information is not going out, and train and encourage people to use that. Now, whether you like DeepSeek, ChatGPT, OpenAI, Microsoft Copilot, will not be the judge there. You choose, but take an enterprise system and have agreements. Look at the data governance principles that your data is contained within the organization. That is necessary. That is necessary for organizations to have. And most organizations, even in EU, which is legislating around this thing, don't have AI policies. I think 70% of organizations, when we last surveyed, don't have AI policies. They should across the world. Second point that Novak mentioned there is labeling of everything AI. That's a big bugbear for me. I hate that as well, and that is happening. We don't have a global organization which is AI Foundation, which tells this is AI, this is not AI, and this is happening a lot. That's where my previous comment that leaders need to understand and appreciate what is AI and be aware, be literate in that field, that they don't fall for those gimmicks where a company comes in and all they have is an if-else statement back there and say it's AI, and now you have to pay $20 million more for that AI, which is not AI. What exactly is in the software? What is AI? Everything is being branded AI. There are companies, there are offerings which are nothing to do with AI, but they're still being sold as AI in the market. So that's a real problem.
Yeah. Novak has mentioned the need for a national policy, that would govern organizations in terms of which of these models they use. And as you say, Ashish, use an enterprise system that's going to give you what you think works for you. At this point, because we are looking at the implications of geopolitics as well. None of us here are politicians, but we would all have our views in terms of which direction we should go. To help with bringing that out a little bit more, I want us to play another video. Quentrell, I just shared the link with you. Now, this is going to be a very different perspective from what people are used to when you look at anything to do with Vladimir Putin. But this is a video, which again by Palki Sharma. As I was looking at the previous video, I saw this one pop up and I thought it was interesting. Let's understand what it is that creates this attraction between President Donald Trump and President Vladimir Putin. And then what does that mean for the rest of the world? So Quentrell, do you have that link up ready to share? Right, here we go. It's still muted.
Wants to be on Putin's side. He's been praising the Russian leader, repeating Moscow's talking points and hinting at a summit. Listen in.
I've had very good talks with Putin, and I've had not such good talks with Ukraine. They don't have any cards, but they play it tough. But we're not going to let this continue. This war is terrible. A dictator without elections. Zelensky better move fast, or he's not going to have a country left. Got to move fast.
All that in just 30 days. It makes you wonder, why does Trump like Putin so much? Is it just politics? Is it ideological? Or is there something sinister here? First, some context. Trump and Putin have always shared warm ties. In the 2016 campaign, Trump praised Putin. When he won, Putin was among the first leaders to congratulate him. In office, that equation continued. Both leaders met in 2018 for a summit. It came in the backdrop of Russian meddling claims. The FBI said Moscow had interfered in the 2016 US election. But after meeting Putin, Trump rejected that. In other words, he sided with Putin over his own intelligence agencies.
All I can do is ask the question. My people came to me, Dan Coates came to me, and some others. They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it would be, but I really do want to see the server.
So the warmth is not new. The question is why? There are 6 main theories around it, around why Donald Trump likes Vladimir Putin. These are theories. Number 1, that Trump colluded with Russia, that Putin meddled on Trump's behalf in 2016. Now, this angle was investigated by the FBI and the US Justice Department, and that too for almost 2 years. And what did they find? Nothing. No evidence of collusion. These probes were criticized in later reports. They said the FBI acted in haste. Either way, no evidence of Russian meddling. Theory number 2, that Putin has dirt on Donald Trump, basically some sort of compromising material. This became all the rage in 2017. A former British spy published a dossier on Trump's alleged links to Moscow. And guess who hired this former spy? Trump's opponent, Hillary Clinton. The dossier was later proven to be fake, yet the allegations have not stopped. Theory number 3, Trump is obsessed with strongmen. As weird as it sounds, it fits a pattern. Trump has cultivated good equations with authoritarian leaders like Xi Jinping of China, Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey, Kim Jong-un of North Korea, and of course, Vladimir Putin of Russia. Trump himself has shown autocratic streaks, so maybe he admires people with same the same qualities. Theory number 4, Trump is not a Cold Warrior. Now, the Cold War was a titanic tussle of the 20th century, the United States versus the Soviet Union, capitalism versus communism. This conflict created distrust towards Moscow in the US, and it continued even after the Cold War ended. Many senior US politicians lived through this period. They rose through the ranks during the Cold War, so their default policy was anti-Russia. Now, Donald Trump is the same age as them, but he was not a politician during the Cold War. He was a businessman. So his approach to Russia is not colored by history. Theory number 5. Trump is a realist. He understands what is possible and what is not. Russia is a $2 trillion economy. It has the largest nuclear arsenal on the planet. It is also the biggest country by size. So you cannot work on global problems without Russia, whether it's arms control or climate change or supply chain resilience or energy security. Without Russia, you cannot address these challenges. Which brings us to the final theory. Trump has business interests in Russia. Now, this theory was peddled by his former lawyer as well. His name is Michael Cohen. Cohen says Trump did not expect to win the 2016 election, so he tried to make the most of the campaign. How? By praising Putin to secure Russian funds. Trump had sent Cohen to discuss real estate deals. His plan was to build a Trump Tower in Moscow, that too with a free penthouse for Putin. And all these theories sound plausible. They also sound like a juicy bit of gossip, but chances are it's not as scandalous or explosive. Putin may have problems at home, but abroad, he has gotten along with most leaders. In the Arab world, no problems. In Asia, no problems. In Africa, same. And even in Europe, he has done quite well. Putin was very close to former German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder. Putin took him on a sleigh ride during Christmas. He even visited Schröder's home on his 60th birthday. Same with former French President Nicolas Sarkozy. He visited Moscow even after leaving office. In 2023, he defended Putin's invasion, which is clearly a sign of close ties. Another example is Italy's former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi. He partied and hunted with Putin. So my point is simple. The Russian president may be rough around the edges, but he gets along with most people and gets along well. In that sense, Trump is not the exception here. He is the norm.
Hi,
you,
how are you?
You can stop it
Thank
now.
you for being here.
Namaste, Mr. President.
Garratt Kelogan.
Yes. Thank you. So certainly some context here for us to understand how the world is changing. What is the possibility that one of the theories she shared, which is that, Trump may be a realist. The truth is there are people who love him and those who hate him. So a lot of people look at him depending on which perspective they adopt. But it certainly shows that there are changes in the air. And when you take into consideration Russia being part of BRICS, the discussions around whether the US currency will continue to enjoy the status that it has, it's important for organizations to see what these changes mean. Where do you invest your relationships? Which suppliers do you use? Because some of this can change overnight. So we have a lovely question in the chat from Sashanta Endoy. Sashanta, would you like to unmute and ask these questions yourself? Because I think we really gave a nice context for us to get some answers from our panelists.
Sure, good afternoon. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
So question number 1, how does Grok AI, that's the AI that Elon Musk developed, how does Grok AI compare to other major AI developments? And what are the implications for international competition? And question 2, what are the opportunities for international collaboration in AI development to mitigate geopolitical tensions? Thank you.
Well, I'm not an expert like Ashish, so he can pick up the pieces after I'm done. I think so many things to talk about. Looking at the geopolitics and Sashanta's question. Maybe just to answer Sashanta's question first. In my personal opinion, Grok AI is when I read up on it, it's meant to be rebellious in tone, like perhaps maybe like a teenager, I have to say. It's quite good, but it's not really as good as OpenAI and DeepSeek in its reasoning, in my opinion. The most fascinating thing for me is that Elon Musk has been bugging Saltman to make OpenAI an open source, but he goes ahead to launch Grok, which now has a paid version. So I'm confused. Why don't you also create an open source model? So that's just stumped me. Maybe Ashish can answer that on why that happened. But yeah, Elon Musk is something else. And also you mentioned one of the implications for international competition. In my opinion, the more models that we see around, the better for humanity and the better for everyone else. I think competition will breed more, will make sure that all the producers of these AI models are able to check each other. If we just had one monopoly like we had with Open AI, I think that would have been disastrous. So I think DeepSeek was good in the fact that it proved that you can use, you can create a model quickly, cheaply, and efficiently. So, I mean, even the Caribbean guys can actually have their own, and you can actually make it focus on. I did read up. I mean, you have a banking. I think your banking is it banking regulations or financial strong legal and financial expertise. So you can build sovereign models built focused on that, and you can be the forefront leaders of that. So many things are possible right now, that are just low hanging fruit, and collaboration in AI development. I mean, Europe is coming together to create their one big AI, right? So you're seeing all these partnerships, Middle East partnering with America. Everyone is partnering with everyone at this point. I actually don't even know who's not partnered with anybody. And even Sam Altman, well, not partnership per se, but he actually remarked on how amazing DeepSeek actually was, right? So I mean, and he was even saying maybe in the future they'll be on the wrong side of history for having made OpenAI go private. And yeah, it's just a lot to digest, and everything is happening every second. The last part on geopolitics. I'm not a politician, but I sometimes, and I'm not a fan of any politician, but I think at times it boils down to strategy. If you look at the cost of this war, what it was costing America, it's just a lot of money, right? And America is the one that is footing most of the bill. So I mean, getting jammy with Putin is also a way of stopping the war immediately, right? And saving money for America. And you have to remember, China is not involved in any war right now, and China is America's nemesis in so many ways. And what's been happening is China is not spending money on any wars; it's just investing all its money in technology, in power, in these huge solar farms, right? And also China was getting a little bit closer to Russia. So it's like, whoa, geez, you can't have these two superpowers being chummy together. So a lot to consider there. It's not as simple as everyone thinks it is. I mean, there's a bigger machinery behind the machinery. Ashish, all yours. Thank you.
Thanks, Vusani. Just really put it there. So most of these models are actually, in terms of performance, not very far away from each other at this point. Grok 3, the latest from Grok, came out yesterday. It's actually quite good in reasoning. It has most reasoning tests. It has surpassed ChatGPT, and ChatGPT OpenAI is saying it will be launched. It is a competition now. Everyone they want to launch a new model next month. And DeepSeek had earlier said that their R2 would come in May. Now they are saying they will try to launch R2 in March. I don't know how they will do that. but they will do that. That's what they are saying. So Grok 3 currently surpassing them in reasoning. But yeah, Vusani, I agree with him that Grok takes a tone from probably Mr. Musk's personality, but everyone to their liking, whatever works for people. In terms of reasoning, it's doing well. So in terms of performance, it's reasonably fine. And the second part of the question is in terms of collaboration in geopolitics, as Vusani mentioned, there's a lot of collaboration already happening. There is a need for people to put things together, their capabilities together. However, this is also leading to a lot of tensions in terms of who gets to do what. A lot of actions that we saw from the United States last year were designed to stop China from leading in the AI race. That's where it was coming from, forcing TSMs, forcing sale of not stopping of chips technology to China. That was part of that bigger agenda to stop them from getting the technology. What DeepSeek showed was it's not necessary. Even with smaller chips or weaker technology, you can do that. DeepSeek is performing well enough. Then there's this whole war about rare earth minerals war, as in trying to get rare earth minerals there. South America is one of the largest sources of lithium at this point. I think I don't have that figures top of my mind. Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile account for a vast majority of lithium supply in the world. However, China does most of the processing of that. So who has the chips? Who has over the last 30 years, we have built an international ecosystem that is very closely connected. I mean, now we are trying to test its powers of its connectedness by stopping certain parts of that to some limit. Can we stop sale of chips and get something in return? Can we control lithium supply? China is threatening stopping the supply of rare earth material or reducing it to some extent. I'm not expert in trade, but I see a lot of that happening. Essentially, everyone needs their own data, their own AI system, sovereignty over that. My suspicion is it will all die down sooner than later, and everyone will have their own AI technology to implement in some form or way in the coming days.
Great. Thank you both, Vusani and Ashish. Certainly a very, very interesting world. As you say, AI is out. The genie is out of the bottle. I remember when Elon Musk himself was, petitioning persons, let's stop the development of AI because he felt the implication was not good for humanity. I remember Mo Godat, who was the chief business officer at Google X, who himself went on a campaign to try and encourage persons to not continue investment in AI. They both now accepted that that battle is lost and that the AI race has already begun, as you have all mentioned. Now, there are so many players in the market. And I think it really was interesting, as you say, that the US had tried to reduce the ability of China to be able to be a key player in that race by preventing them being able to get the chips. But the release of DeepSeek certainly shows that it's possible. Any country, if you have the will, and you invest the time, chances are you can be able to develop your own AI system that gives you the ability to control the narrative on your side. So yeah, this has been some really great discussions for us. Are there any other questions from the chat from the audience? Sorry. Just checking in with persons if there was anyone else who wanted. Okay, so then, as I haven't seen a question or any hand raised, I am here within the Caribbean region, running our own organizations here, trying to understand the implications of these different relationships and what it would mean. I like the idea that has been introduced that there be legislation that would control how AI is used. The reality is we've had social media for a lot longer. We have discussed the implications of social media and we have talked about the need for regulations and legislation around that. As you mentioned, the word guardrails. These are important, yet we haven't been able to agree on that. What are the chances that we'd be able to understand the environment well enough so that we can develop a national policy that allows us to get the benefits of AI without being too exposed to the bad actors. From what I'm seeing and I'm hearing, as both of you have shared, there is a lot of competition in the market, and this competition in AI do serve as a check and balance that allows us to have some measure of control over what is happening. But at this point, what do we say to our leaders in the region? Should we be petitioning our governments to start looking at development of that national policy? Do we and which direction do we look at? I know, Vusani, you mentioned the European model with the regulations that they had already started to build out there. Any further thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at social media, I mean, Europe had very strong framework, if I have to say that also. I mean, if you look, I think there was a case on Alphabet, which is the owner of Google, back in the day of monopolizing the search industry, the advertisement industry online, well, the internet as a whole. And I think Europe had a good grasp on that, but it took quite a while to implement all of these policies. And quite honestly, I don't think we'll be seeing that anytime with AI as well. I mean, there are just vast number of uses for AI right now. Saudi Aramco, the biggest oil company in the world, is using it for its audit function. I mean, its audit team is just running 100% on AI right now. And if you look at how many industries would just need to be to have their own frameworks and their own policies and ethical, it is just a lot. So I think what we should be focusing on right now is gearing up for the future. Look, the governments should really start educating most of their I don't like to say the younger population, because the adult population also needs to. This is what the government here did very well before this whole AI thing became. It was really encouraging people to apprise themselves of what AI is about. Just basically, China was able to create DeepSeek because of, number one, necessity. I mean, necessity is the mother of all creation, right? And number two, they have an amazing culture of of education, right? AI has been in the curriculum for some time right now. I mean, there are countries I've been to. It's not even in any curriculum or in any university. So China's had that for a while. And it was just not simply just down to distillation. It's just how they created that. It was just remarkably clever. And any of the AI model founders really agree to that, right? So we have to have proper human capital right now that we need to cultivate and foster. In the next 5 years, they need to be ready for whatever is happening, right? Because clearly everyone is just saying the next 5 years, the next 5 years. I think just organizations, our people need to be ready, and the schooling system just needs to also radically change a bit. I think this is what's going to really, really create a nation that's going to be able to take advantage of AI, or one that's going to be left behind, applying to organizations too as well. Ashish,
Absolutely.
all yours.
No, absolutely. I totally agree with everything you have said there. I'm personally not a huge fan of over-regulations. So while it may seem what is happening in Europe is great, there is a debate on this side of the ocean as well, about innovations versus regulations. I was at many of these policy meetings in Brussels as well as in Dublin, and many organizations have claimed that these kind of regulations do inhibit innovation. You want innovation, but you also want control somewhere. So I think rather than governments creating some kind of controls, what is necessary is the direction that Vusani mentioned, is you have education policies. You educate people. First, you get the next generation ready for being better equipped with AI. The way we teach things right now is probably not needed for the next 10, 12 years. You need to dramatically overhaul that. And second, have different kind of training programs for everyone, or push, support, encourage organizations to have their own policy, have have a sort of a program where organizations are exposed to the challenges, positives, the negatives of AI, that organizations can decide what is good for them, use more risky one if they are a more entrepreneurial organization, or use less AI if they are, let's say, a banking or deal with very sensitive data. Depending on where you are in the risk profile, you can choose your own AI implementation levels if you are educated properly, if government supports you. So I would rather suggest that as institutions like yourself encourage government and organizations to study the technology, study the implications for them, and develop their own policy that is right for their context, for their customers, for their service providers, etc., rather than force any kind of overarching regulation that would stop a lot of innovation from happening. Innovation should keep happening. We should not over-regulate stuff. No strong arm regulation has worked ever. We have in Europe, we have had GDPR for many years now. It is fine. It's not that it has totally stopped spam or selling of data. It has helped, but it has also created challenges for companies to monetize content in certain ways as well. Those are challenges. Facebook threatens to leave Europe every second day, more or less. So there are issues with regulation. What you need is education and development of policy, educated policies at every level, so that you can choose what is right for you at an organizational level.
Quick question to Ashish, because now who regulates? I mean, if you've created these monopolies, and you have to understand, Americans are geared, everything coming from Silicon Valley or American business. Sam Altman had a lecture where he invited, was it Peter Thiel, one of the co-founders of Facebook, PayPal Mafia. I mean, really close friend to Musk, all these billionaires, and it's basically, it was an MIT competition is for losers, right? This is one of the things that they follow there at MIT and Harvard and Science and Business School. America is geared. They want to create monopolies. This is the way they control the economies at scale, right? That's how they remain a global power. So how do you put those checks then to say, fine, you have Google here, and they are dominating the search space. Every time there is a competitor in the market, that's really good. They either outbid them and lure their employees with high paychecks. So I mean, we need to figure out a way on how we can regulate some of these monoliths. And I mean, GDPR is not the most amazing, but I mean, it tries, right? At the very least. So, I mean, how do you do it? Is it other corporations? Is it a council? Is it a government?
Don't know. I don't think Europe has been able to regulate all of them. Still Google is dominant. ChatGPT is the most popular tool here. It's the same as US, more or less. There's one thing we have to understand here is the kind of technology. Most digital platforms, by the very nature of digital platforms, are geared towards winner takes all approach. In these fields, is very difficult to have thriving competition of 20 plus players that are profitable the way you had in brick and mortar shops or mom and pop stores around your locality, in your village, in your city. That's not something which is natural in the field of digital platforms. A world cannot support so many profitable firms. So that's the nature of the nature of the system. If Uber is there, in most places there are one or two players in Uber or Airbnb, etc. If you look at, why would you be on any other platform? If all of your friends are in ChatGPT, you are on ChatGPT, and ChatGPT keeps getting better. That's the winner takes all approach that happens in these platforms.
No, but you're right. You're right. But at the same time, I mean, some of these guys have.
We need to regulate them. That's
the capital. I like what Nova said here.
We need to regulate them. We need to regulate them. So what is necessary is governments and key stakeholders being active all the time and be on the lookout. So let companies do what they are doing in terms of innovation, but the role of the governments has to be to support, to ensure that the positions are not being abused. There's no they are not anti-competitive by nature. They're not buying up everything. Take up the companies if necessary, and ensure that they're not being unethical. Some governments do a better
There
job at
you
it.
go. Can I just hold you off on that one? You just said the government must make sure, right, that they just
Yeah.
don't. But exactly, how do they do that, right? I mean, this is trickiest, and
Tricky.
us as the people who are in corporate governance, this is going to be weighing heavily in the next few years to on people sitting on boards. We'll be facing this quite a lot,
Well,
right?
Savi, I'm an academic. I say things that should be done. We leave it to people like you to implement it on the field, actually. I'm a university professor.
So I want to bring up another point, and this is a question both on Professor Garratt's behalf and my own. We are of a different generation. We did not grow with technology. So the internet met us when we were already professionals in our workplace. Now we have to deal with AI. We are still the ones who are the decision makers at our age. So, but how should we navigate this space where, to a great extent, you are dependent on your young workforce who have an entirely different value system, who may not have the same vision as you do? Yeah, so what would you advise people like Professor Garratt and I? What would help us to navigate the space to know how best
You know the
to
funniest thing? I'll just be 30 seconds on this. The funniest thing, the most AI can actually help you to keep abreast of all of that. This is the simple answer. I'm amazed. If you look at these tech companies, I'm quite honestly, if you follow the big machinery happening around the world right now, especially in America, how these companies are buying IPs, they're buying what is it? Microsoft, the computer or software company, is going to buy nuclear stations. Imagine these boards. You're a person who is engineer, is sitting on a board. Now there's a board pack, and we have to get nuclear plants. This is happening, and it's just crazy. And how do they keep up? It's really, really AI, right? You have to infuse in your life. You just have to learn how to use the basics of AI. And I think people should not really be overwhelmed. You don't need to be a master user. You just need to know how to prompt it to get the right. There are so many tools that are available right now for AI. I was just teaching my mother, she's not really great when it comes to speaking English. She speaks our home language, Zulu, fluently, of course. And I was just showing her, you can translate all these things into Zulu on this. She is all her books, all the things she's ever liked, she's just tracking it on there. And so there's so many things you can do, so many tools that are now so available for all of that, right? So I think AI is your great leverager. People should not be afraid of it. You can use it definitely to summarize, to simplify text and everything else. This is the biggest gift in my own opinion.
Absolutely,
Ashish?
I totally agree there. AI is a leveler rather than a challenge for anyone. I'll give you a couple of small examples as to why. So you don't need to actually build AI. That's not what is expected from senior leaders and board members of companies. They are people. There is OpenAI. Whatever Elon Musk is doing, he's building Grok AI. So use that. So we run a program. As you mentioned at the beginning, Kamla, MSc Business Analytics. We earlier used to take people with statistical and programming background. They have to do some bit of programming on analytics and AI, etc. Now we said in 5 years' time, we don't need all of this thing. So we have opened up our admissions over the last 2 years. We take people from all backgrounds. We have graduates of arts, music, all of them coming in, and they use Copilot, which is a coding tool, and they don't need to know the syntax. They can develop codes. They need to learn a little bit of things here and there. So the difference between someone who knows a lot of coding and not a lot of coding is decreasing. Now there are nuances. Don't quote me on that. you don't need to know a lot of coding. There are nuances. Very high level coding can only be done by people who are big experts. But basic level of coding, even people with no formal computer science education can do. And our own research center, we have been doing in Ireland and even in Americas, a lot of board trainings for people at board level so that they understand the concept of AI, the pitfalls, the benefits, so that you can implement it. And that's what is expected. And another small example, I am advisor to Dublin City Council, a local authority in Ireland. Dublin is the capital city. That's the largest authority on how to and where to implement AI. As a first step in that exercise, we ran a survey to see and to be sort of on official devices only. We surveyed how much AI they are using, which kind of AI tools, which kind of people are using. What we found is that in the younger generation, 35 and below, that bracket that workers, that's what was classified as younger generation. Please don't quote me on that again. What the ones who are using AI in a very casual manner for fun, for like chit chat, for asking questions. But people who are more senior in the organization, they were trying and using AI to solve the problems they were having. For example, they were getting lots of emails complaint about housing, garbage disposal, etc., to classify those emails, etc. They were using it very useful manner. So everyone can use AI. You don't need to code AI. What is necessary is everyone understands what are the pitfalls, limits, and what is possible, what you should do, which data you should not upload on a public system, etc. That is necessary. Once small enterprises, medium enterprises, everyone, they should do a brief training. Much of it is freely available. All you need to do is get your board members, senior leaders together for a day or two offsite and talk about that, understand it, and then make decisions accordingly. You don't need to implement it. Almost all the leadership has gone through that exercise in calling it analytics, technology revolution, digital revolution, transformation that has happened in all of our lifetimes, all of your lifetimes, and senior leadership has gone through that. This is not very different. Just need to be aware of the governance rules. That's all.
Yeah. Just to add lastly, if maybe Ashish can assist later. I'm leaning on him quite a lot. I mean, he's the digital master. I mean, there are things called agents, for example, right? I mean, you might have. I hate to describe them as apps for AI, but something is a similar concept that will just basically make it super easy for everyone. To be quite honest, Ashish is 100% right. You don't need to be the master user of AI. I think you just have to be very good at learning how to prompt if you're a basic user, right? And then I think the next step obviously is these agents that are coming up now and everything else. You won't even need to do that. You can bring Ashish and his company to come and implement that for you. And all you wake up and do in the morning, Kamla, is you can actually speak to your AI and say, what are the most important emails I have today? Because Ashish has already implemented the system, right? So you don't need to. So I think it's just amazing what these guys are doing with these agents right now. You can actually reply to your email because it already knows your writing style and everything else. You have an assistant full time. So yeah, I think it's quite a lot that's possible. So people shouldn't be scared of using AI.
Okay. We are 10 minutes heading towards the end of our discussion period. I just want to answer a question from Rowan in the chat. She wanted to know if CCGI has any plans in place to help SMEs to devise policies that would protect things like their data. And so, Rowan, not at the moment, but we are hoping to grow in that area. So we would be able to provide better service to our members. So it is something that we have on the cards coming up, okay? I see Jeremy too has already put the survey link in the chat. I encourage all of you, please click on that link and give us your feedback. We have great sessions at CCGI because we listen to you. So make sure to give us that feedback there in terms of, what you like, and if there are any other areas that you'd like us to focus on, we would welcome that feedback from you. There's another comment from Sushanta as well. And there is a question that she has linked to it. Are there any emerging alternative or renewed energy sources currently being used or have the potential to be used to power these?
100%. I mean, as I said before, there is another alternate race that's happening parallel to the AI creation. Proper power structures. I was watching in the morning, they have built mobile nuclear fusion reactors. It's amazing, something that fits on a truck and can just be deployed. But because it's housed in very thick steel, making sure that thing doesn't leak out. In the next 5 years, we will see a whole lot of power sources that most of us haven't heard of before. So that's what's happening right now. All these AI companies are investing heavily on cheaper power sources. But for now, I think there isn't the time for that. So they're just investing, and then it'll catch up as it goes. As I say, it's 25 years. That's all they're saying.
Yes.
Ashish, you have more to add?
Nothing more to add to that. It's true. Right now, we are going back. We are opening up coal plants everywhere, setting up new windmills, and Microsoft is talking of setting up its own power plants in many places. So all that is happening. There is research and development happening for alternative power sources, fusion, and a lot of that is happening. We don't know where it will go. On the other hand, what is also happening with things like DeepSeek is you are creating AI models that don't require as much energy. So there's things happening on both ends of the spectrum. But as of now, energy demand is increasing, going through the roof. There are protests happening in many countries because these data centers are taking too much power. So everything is happening. It's just chaos.
Yeah, I agree.
As we go into the last 5 minutes, I'm going to ask you for some closing thoughts, and I'm going to give you my question in terms of what I'd like to hear. And I'd also invite Professor Garratt to share, his thoughts in terms of the discussions for today. But quite clearly, this discussion has demonstrated that we need to adopt AI. We need to know how to use the tools in order that it can help us in our organizations, and how to also protect our data. So very smartly being able to use the tools. Given the geopolitics, however, my question would be, should we use ChatGPT or should we use DeepSeek? Or Ashish, should we follow you and have both on our system? So think about that as you answer and give us your final thoughts. But Professor Garratt, I want to go to you first and ask you if you want to share any final thoughts with us.
Well, I'm in great agreement with Vusani and Ashish in what they're saying. And I think the key phrase in the immediate focus was take time to understand it. And that is, there's so much noise in the system. There's exactly what you've just been saying. Everybody rushing around, waving their arms around, saying it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, or we're all doomed. All of that stuff is occurring continuously at the moment. So I think CCGI can really help us by almost distilling what Vusani and Ashish have said, but we must keep in touch with them to continue to understand what is developing. But I think they've given us a very helpful framework to begin to understand that. And thank you both for doing that. The last thoughts I have, though, are on the geopolitical side, which are most probably more controversial. Two facts I would put to Vusani. One, the Chinese are spending an inordinate amount of money on defense. And the amount of, there was panic 2 days ago in Sydney, Australia, when 3 warships, this is the Blue Water Navy of China, appeared off Sydney, 150 miles off Sydney. Total panic in the whole region to do with that. Now, that wasn't by accident. That's quite deliberate. And I know through setting up the center in Southeast Asia that the South China Sea and that part, the western part of the Pacific are in great concern at the moment about what is occurring there. So that is correct. The other thing was that I never believe anything that Trump says until I find 2 or 3 other sources I can check against. And when he was saying, yeah, we're going to get all the lithium and stuff out of Ukraine, and we paid for it, and we paid, he actually overestimated by a factor of 5 the amount they paid. The amount they've actually paid so far is exactly the same as the EU. And I'd be interested to see whether the EU starts demanding lithium and stuff out of Ukraine as part of its reparations, or whether they say, no, that's entirely the wrong approach. So just too small. But the bigger thing is about Russia, for me. I accept that the really interesting player is hardly talked about at the moment, and that is India. I totally accept that. And that's something that we all need to watch.
Mhm.
But if I say to people, what's the current size of the Russian economy? Well, any ideas?
Actually,
That's exactly the response I get from all
I know it's weekend.
No. It's the actual size, the comparative size. It's about the same size as Italy, and is slightly smaller than Brazil.
Wow.
Then think about it in power terms. It has launched a war, an invasion of Ukraine. It is decimating its own resources, and they have a particular demographic problem, which is that already Russia had the lowest rate of survival of its male population well before the war. The average age of death for Russian males was roughly 65, mainly through to alcoholism. They've now put a huge amount of their younger generation into the war, many of whom have been killed. So in the newspapers today, you read the Russian male population is now being offered $45,000 to go to war if they're over 50 years old. Now that takes a bit of thinking through, because they are actually decimating, literally, their population. Now, I have friends in Russia who worked there for many decades. And even when I was in China in 76, my Russian friends were saying, we're running out of population. We cross 9 time zones in our country. We do not have enough population to actually make the country work. And the big issue in those days was, would China, either physically or economically, simply take over what was then the Soviet Far East? And actually, Russia would be able to do very little to stop that if they chose to. Now, since then, demographics again, I believe demographics and geography are vitally important in these areas. Since then, the Chinese developed, and from 76 when I was there, they were just starting it, the one-child policy. And that is having a devastating effect on the Chinese population. Because by definition, they don't reproduce. And therefore, China is also rapidly running out of people, and the people it has are aging very fast. And they've encouraged younger people to go for mortgages and flats and all that. And that market is now crashing. So China isn't in a great position either. And although it's doing all this wonderful work, and I totally agree with the quality of the people I meet, particularly the mathematicians from that area, they're in a mess as well. So we've got messes everywhere at the moment in geopolitical terms. Now, AI could be used to actually get some hard facts out of all the stuff I've been talking about, because I bet everything I've said can be shown to be wrong. but I feel I'm more right. I don't live on social media, so I tend to live a fairly happy life, and one that allows me time to think, and one that allows me to every now and again I pick up something I think, well, that can't be right. Well, that's nonsense. That's just not common sense. But it turns out common sense is not very common. So I'm just interested in geopolitical terms, the way this is going to work out. So let us hope that we can use AI to the advantage of all. But I have a nasty feeling at the moment we're going to go through some very, very massive abuses of AI over the next 5 to 10 years before things stabilize. Sorry if that's a bit down, unlike me, but that's where I am.
Thank you very much, Professor Garratt. And I love that picture you painted in our heads as well, Not so much time on social media, so enough time to be able to sit and think and enjoy a different level of happiness. So thank you for that. Yes, who wants to go next? Vusani, you want to wrap up with before we go to Ashish? Oh,
Well, I mean, that was quite a wrap up from Prof. Garratt. I really don't have much to say after that, but the world is a messy and scary space right now. And the thought of AI being weaponized as well is just so scary. I mean, most of these countries right now won't be, I mean, it's just not physical war, right? It's also technological. I mean, there's going to be a lot of hacking and all of these guys trying to disrupt each other's political landscapes. Just a lot going on. I think quite recently I was looking at a missile that's got an AI chip in it and can easily be guided, just put into this little drone, and these are the things that are going to be happening quite soon, and that's just scary. So I think the more scared we are, the better and the better and finer path we'll be able to walk. I think people should really be scared first of AI. I don't like fear mongering, but at this rate, on where we are with all the political tensions, I think it's better to be scared, so that we can hold these big corporations liable for the disasters and whom they partner up with, and who their chips fall down to, if it's a weapons manufacturer getting all this. But I mean, who else can stop them, right? It's just impossible, but at least try. So there's a lot, lots of regulations, lots of papers that need to come out. It's just a lot of learning that needs to be done around AI and its multiple applications. Spam's happening right now. I mean, Saudi Aramco was hit with by a cyber attack recently. The whole call center, everything was down. It's someone deep faked their boss's someone else's boss's face, and they were able to sign checks. I'm sure you read that story. It's crazy the things that are happening, but also there are very, very good things happening because of AI, and also at the same time. So we're working a very fine line, and we don't even know where we'll end up. Yeah, so that's my wrap up.
Vusani. Ashish, your closing remarks?
Thank you. Thanks for a very interesting session. Thanks to you, Kamla, for organizing this. So I'll start off by trying to answer the question you asked us to answer as well. Is between things like Grok, OpenAI versus DeepSeek, what's to use? The answer is it depends on the context. Unfortunately, there is no overarching great software that I would sit here and recommend. It is every tool has biases. Every tool has places where it works better than other. No tool is perfect for everything else. All that is needed is a well-studied, educated usage of the tool that you are using, why you are using that. As long as that happens, any tool can solve the purpose. Now, at a broader thing, I agree with what Professor Garratt and what Vusani are talking about. This is we don't know where this is going. AI is being seen as a solution to some of the issues, for example, that China and Japan are facing, but it can replace workers to some extent. Now, will it work? Can the society survive by automating loads of things and not having humans around? We don't know. We will see. We'll see following. We will see it happening in our lifetimes in action, whether society starts collapsing or whether AI can support that. The other scary thing is the wars, because the world is getting uh, more tense. I'm not expert in geopolitics, but we do work in the area of something around misinformation and that spread. One of the things that I found very interesting, and I'll just close with that, is one of the reasons why war like Vietnam War came to an end was internal willingness and support for the war started to end when coffins started coming back and saying, why are we having so many deaths? If and the deaths made the war personal. Those soldiers dying made the war personal for a lot of people. Now, what we are seeing with the new age wars happening in Russia, in Ukraine, is wars of drones. And drones not being manipulated by humans, being manipulated by AI. You can program them. At that point, what happens is your perception of a death of life starts to decrease. If you, as a soldier, if as a society, you are seeing that happen, that's a separate story. If you have programmed some technological tool to make those deaths happen, that's a totally different thing. And it will make the wars a bit more impersonal and a video game like. At that point, I think the societal support for wars may increase, and the tensions that so far are being calmed down by talks or fear of deaths might not happen in the same way. That's what my feel is in that field. I'll be happy to be proven wrong and AI being used just for good things and supporting productivity and having higher efficiency and automating your emails. I'll be very happy if it does that. It can already do that. But I agree with Garratt and Vusani that yeah, we might see a lot of bad usage over the next 5-10 years as well.
Thank you very much, Ashish. Thank you, Vusani. Thank you so much, Professor Garratt. I think today was extremely, extremely enlightening. It gave me so many additional perspectives in terms of understanding AI and how it can be used. I think the conclusion that I personally have come to is that we have to use it, but we have to understand it as much as possible. And so I want to recommend a book, which I did recommend when we had looked at cybersecurity some time ago. Several times you've mentioned how scary this AI environment is. So there's this book called Scary Smart by Mo Garratt. I think when Mo started the book, he was of the perspective that we need to stop AI. We need to stop investment. In the process of writing the book, I suppose, however length of time it took, his mind changed. And by the time he finished the book, he was talking about how do we make an AI world work for us. And he talked about each of us, and it reminds me now, each of us are using the tools, and therefore how we interact with AI is going to signal to AI our values, and it will deal exactly with that point, Ashish. Do we use it to enhance the things that we value, or do we allow it to abuse those systems and values, so we become dehumanized, desensitized to a lot of the changes and impact on people as well? So I'm happy that we are engaged in the conversation. I think this is so crucial for us to ensure that we take charge of understanding what this means, even as it evolves, so that we could make the best decision on any given day, given what environment that we are in. So thank you so much. I have really, really, truly appreciated your taking your time to come and join and share with us so candidly your thoughts and your advice on how we can better understand AI and its significance in the geopolitics as the world changes. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and we will see you guys again soon.
Thank you. Take care.
Many thanks. Cheers.
Thank you, Professor Garratt. Okay.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.